Stadt is the name. We're also joined by some comrades from another unit, IR28 from German. They've been detached because studied a specialist unit, and the men that have been detached are specialists. Either in demolition, close combat, night fighting and so on and so forth. We are shock troops, we're assault troops. We're now reaching the later stages of the war. As you can see from the equipment, it's far, far different from the way that the German army entered the war in 1914. In 1914, the classic German attire, military attire, was the famous Pickelhaube, which none of the troops now wear because the Pickelhaube is absolutely useless to give any head protection, and you'll often see photographs of German soldiers wearing the Feldmütze, which is a soft cap, which again none of us are wearing at the moment, because it was easier to sling weapons with Feldmütze than with Pickelhaube. But the Germans rapidly decided during 1915 that the head wounds particularly were rather galling and serious from shrapnel. And shrapnel is not a shell splinter. It's mentioned even on the news today, man was hit by shrapnel. Shrapnel is a weapon, and it's a case, a shell case that's filled with lead balls. So it's like musket balls, it's like a giant shotgun, but it's directed at the enemy and it's fired overhead so that it hits the upper part of the body and inflicts pretty serious head wounds. So this Stahlhelm is to protect from shrapnel. It's an anti-shrapnel helmet. And the Germans started wearing the Stahlhelm, and the first troops to wear the Stahlhelm were the assault troops, the Sturmtruppen. The German word for assault is Sturm. It doesn't mean storm, it's assault, so it's Sturmtruppen. The difference between a Sturmtruppen and a Stoßtruppen, Stoß is shock, they're shock troops, we're assault troops. Okay, so, going back to 1914, the uniform that my comrade is wearing here is a 1914 tunic. You can see it's fairly ornate. It's got lots of brass buttons, slightly here, it's got brass buttons all through the shape. Very nice, quite expensive to make, and fairly impractical in the sort of warfare that developed after what the Germans termed the Aufmarsch, which is the advance in August 1914. What then developed was there were variants of the early tunic with the red piping, but ultimately you ended up with the later war tunic, which again you'll see some of our comrades are wearing here with the green collar, and this is how the German army ended the war. If you see a photograph of what looks like an older, if you like, a veteran soldier, he's been very fortunate because it's highly likely he hasn't been wounded, because if you were wounded and mangled, you went back, you wouldn't get your old tunic back, it'd be flooded a bit and burnt or turned into rags or whatever, and you'd get a new tunic. But the new soldiers that came to replace, the German word for replacement, as in a spare part for a car, is ersatz. It doesn't mean dodgy or disreputable, it means replacement. Soldiers, young men who missed being called up for the service early on, and they were on replacement. So you've got lots of ersatz soldiers that were sent into the line, but it doesn't mean that they were lousy soldiers, they were just replacements. Okay, so what you then start to get as the war develops is you go from the marching boots, which our comrade here and here is wearing. This chap's actually got early war boots because they're light brown. Our comrade here has got Gamaschen, that's the German word for the leggings which the British call puttees, but the Germans call them Gamaschen because they're leg wraps. Also, you'll see a difference as well now in footwear. Some of the soldiers are wearing ankle boots. The British again call them ankle boots, they're not. They're Schnurrschuhe, which means lace-up shoes. And the German soldier knows the difference between a Marschstiefel, which is a marching boot, not called a jackboot by the Germans, Marschstiefel, and Schnurrschuhe, which is These ones here, I also have Schnurrschuhe. These are my walking boots from before the First World War, so they're slightly different. Okay, so the equipment that the men have got. The German army started the war with the G98, which our two comrades at the end here have got. And the G98, commonly known to the British as the Mauser. The 98 means the year that it was actually introduced, which is 1898. And a variant of this weapon is still available and is used by various Third World armies and so on today. It's a very efficient weapon, it's a very accurate weapon. A great misconception about the German army in 1914 is that they were lousy shots. They weren't. They had a different way of shooting, but it was no less accurate and no less effective than British rifle fire. But as the war developed, the Germans developed and adapted very, very, very well to trench warfare. They had the advantage, they had all the high ground. The British unfortunately had all the lower areas. The Germans abandoned those areas to the British. And it gave them an advantage because they could see down on the British, and also they dug very, very deep entrenchments. Towards the end of the war, they were moving back. They were being pushed back, and they were giving up ground because they had to. The Germans also developed very early on what they termed assault groups and assault tactics, because there had to be a way to break what's commonly termed deadlock. There had to be a way to punch through, to make a break. And the Germans from early 1915, a small battle which is not known to the British, but Hartmann-Weilerskopf, which was against the French, introduced the first assault troops, and it was extremely successful. They carried on developing this throughout the war. There were assault battalions, there were also shock battalions and shock divisions. And they started to develop different ideas with rifles. There is a rifle here which has got a magazine. And recent archaeological evidence, which I found on the Somme, I went to a small museum on the Somme, and there were 6 Gewehrs that came out of a trench, all on the Somme at Pozières, and 4 of them had the butt plate missing. If my comrade here holds up his rifle, you'll see here next to the trigger guard is a butt plate. This pops out. That exposes the whole bomb. What you then can do is lock in this 20-round magazine. Doesn't make it into an automatic assault rifle. What it does, it gives you 20 rounds, so you don't have to keep loading through the breech here with a 5-round clip. So that's a big difference. And as I say, referring back to the find on the Somme, 4 of the bottom plates were missing. They've also found in the same trench these magazines. Now what that means is that certainly at the Somme, and the assault groups were in action as well at Verdun. That was their first big outing. That was their first big outing at Verdun, and so we can safely now say that early in 1916 the Germans had already developed the use of these much more useful magazines. Now at the start of the war, the Germans started with the well-known Maxim, which is the MG Maschinengewehr 08, or the machine gun MG08. Now, this is also an MG08, and the original MG08 started off on what the British term a sled mount, and it was blooming heavy. And so what the Germans did, they did away with the sled mount. They put, instead of the grips at the back, which was used originally, they put a firepot on it, and it becomes not a lot more, but it becomes more transportable. Also, they developed this, which is called, it's a drum. The German word for a drum is a Tonne, so it's a Tonne magazine, and that clips onto the side. It has about 80 rounds, I believe, yeah? And that clips on, and that allows the gun to be much more transportable. There's a water canister, which is actually for condensing the water in the jacket. That remained, it was water cooled. Also there's the hose pipe, which goes into the condenser can, and when the steam comes off the gun, it goes into the condenser can, and then it's poured back in. And there would be lots and lots of water carried.